I needed more than just a money motivation, and I didn't
Mhm.
realize that at first. And we learned that through working with our coach.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. Hello, everybody. Mike Gore-Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you're listening to another episode of the Painter Growth Podcast. And this episode is a different kind, a little bit of a break from the regular. It's a painter growth story, is what we call it, painter growth story. And joined by one of my favorite clients that we've had in a long time, Dave Norby, and the founder and CEO slash co-owner of Norby Painting. And super stoked to chat with you today and learn a bit more about your story.
Good, yeah, it's going to be fun. Thanks.
Yeah. So, where are you located, and tell me a little bit about your business last year, or before you found us, or your history of your business up to finding out about us.
Okay. Well, we're located in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been here about 25 years. Before that, actually operated a painting company also in Minneapolis, which is where I grew up. Last year, we did about 900 in revenue, which, not setting any records or anything, but it's a nice little business for us. And that's pretty much what it's been for a lot of years. Never really tried to scale it. Never have done really much marketing. It's basically 100% referral in terms of where we get our work from. So yeah, that's kind of what it is right now. I've been doing it for 45 years, which tells you how old I am. It started slowly, and we basically used it to make a living and pay our bills for all those decades while we were really doing something else. Some volunteer work, which I can get into, possibly too. But that's what we used it for all those years. More recently, it's growing a little bit up to that, almost a million mark now. And as our kids got older and went to college and then got done with college, we decided that, I got to figure out what we're going to do for the rest of these years here. I'm approaching actually retirement age, but I'm certainly not that guy who's going to, retire and sit around the house every day for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So around that time, when we were kind of talking about that, thinking about that, is when we just ran into you, and we decided that scaling this thing and making it what it could be, rather than only just staying where it is, would be a good thing. So that's kind of the last few months.
So a lot of people, when they're faced with a decision of growing their business, a lot of the people's issues is they need more leads. For you,
Right.
like what were your pain points in your business that made you start to look for another solution?
I think because our business was at a point where, we made enough that we could have just kept doing that, and we would have gotten through retirement, just fine. But it got to the point where, like I said, I started thinking about, what are we going to do with our time? And what I've realized through the last few months as we've been working, with you guys, is that I need to change. And I guess that's probably my biggest, takeaway from this. Obviously, we need to change things in the business, but I need to change in order to go bigger, because I don't have to. I'm not in that place where, we don't have enough jobs to pay the rent next month or anything like that. So it was more of I needed more than just a money motivation, and I didn't realize that at first. And we learned that through working with our coach.
And so, how is that manifesting in your business? Like, what were the symptoms that you were seeing in your business? It wasn't needing more jobs, it wasn't needing more money, but like what were you seeing that made you decide something had to change?
Well, I think when we first went into it a few months ago, I thought, there'll be a few things we need to change. Probably have to tweak a couple of other things, but by and large, we kind of have this down, and a few minor changes, and we'll be good to go. Well, I realized pretty quickly that it was a lot more than that. And 3-4 months down the road, it's more like, we're pretty much revamping everything, putting better systems in place. We had systems, because we had to. But number one, they were heavily reliant upon us. And number two, they were not very efficient or scalable. So I realized that we really needed to change not just a few things, but a lot of things. And then one day we were talking with our coach, and he said, "Yeah, how much money do you want to make?" And we went kind of through that discussion. And then he said, "That's not going to be enough for you to keep going." And I said, "Well, I think sense of accomplishment then, would be another thing." And he said, "That's good also, but not enough." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, you need to decide who you want to be in the community." And I didn't say this to him at the time, but inside I'm thinking, yeah, I've been there, done that. I've spoken in front of people a lot in my life through the things that we were involved in outside of painting, and which wasn't interested in going back into that. But I've learned enough about him that if he says something, I'm going to spend some time thinking through it, because I've learned that every time it's been very wise and very important. So I did that over the following few days, and I realized that it's not so much about the community, but coming to an understanding or a realization of who I want to be. I've been this person for all these years, and I'm 62 years old, so I'm not young, but still have a fair amount of life left. And I've realized that there's some things that I wanted to do when I was in my early 20s that I pretty much put on the back burner to do the other things that we did, and served a lot of other people's visions, but never really followed through on what I wanted to do. So it really helped me to recapture that whole thing. And so I've been thinking a lot lately about that, because like I said earlier, we don't necessarily need the money. I'm not saying we're making, a ton of money, but we're making enough that we don't need more, but it certainly would be nice to have it. And it would be nice to become that person that I wanted to be, 45 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, you said that the business was relying too much on you in, last year and in previous years. What did that look like? Like, what was your role within the company, and what were you doing on a day-to-day basis?
Prior to like 5 or 6 years ago, I ran the thing completely by myself. So I did everything. I wasn't on the tools that recently. It's been probably 15, 20 years since I was really on the tools in a significant way. But I would do all the estimates. Um, I would do all the follow up with customers, scheduling jobs, run production. And back in the day, I was actually doing production. So the whole bootstrap model of painting for 3 hours and changing clothes in the truck, and then going over doing an estimate and coming back and changing clothes again, getting back on the tools, and that whole bootstrap model. I did that for a lot of years, but I got out of the tool side of it. So, but I was still doing all the rest of it, and I did estimates based on, I could just look at a house and knew how long it was going to take, but again, that wasn't scalable. About 5 or 6 years ago, my wife Michelle joined me and took over the sales side of it. And that's when I really realized it was hard to scale it, because it was hard to, someone who had never painted before, it was hard to teach her how to do that. But we figured out a system. It wasn't a very good system, but it worked for us. And but when we started thinking about hiring other people, hiring a sales manager, a production manager, and what that would imply and what would have to be in place, we realized that we need to change quite a bit. And that's what we're in the process of doing now.
Yeah. So, I mean, even as recent as like this year, so you don't have or you're working on bringing on a production manager, but like, what did your day to day look like at the start of this year that made you feel like you wanted to be a little bit more removed?
Traveling around to job sites all day, basically,
Mm-hmm.
solving problems, delivering paint or whatever the guys needed. And I realized that I would rather sit at my desk, at least for a portion of the day, and work on building this business and learn how to build a business or scale a business, and do that instead, and get myself completely out of the field.
Totally.
And so our goal is sometime in the first quarter probably of next year to hire a production manager, possibly part time at first, but then before long going on to full time.
Yeah. Awesome. So fast forward a little bit, you come across some of our marketing, some of our advertising, and you hop on a call with a member of my team. Tell me about that. Like, what was kind of your first foray into learning about painter growth like?
Um, I'm pretty sure it was you that I was on a call with, and you did a really good job of explaining, kind of in a conceptual overall way, what it takes to scale a business. I'd always assumed that either you just had to be good at it by nature, or it was a highly complex thing, that would probably take years to learn. But talking with you, I realized that it's actually pretty simple. It's not easy. It's hard work, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of change, but it's not complex. It's not complicated. It's not something that takes, complex mathematical formulas or anything like that. You just follow, some pretty simple concepts and put pretty simple things into place and be willing to make mistakes, be willing to let things fall to the ground when you wish they wouldn't, be willing to even let things just, fail completely, and then try something else, which is something that I had never done. I'd always held my business up by always going around and solving problems before they happen, which is a terrible thing in terms of scaling.
Yeah.
So yeah, talking to you and then, the coaches and the phone calls, I really learned that's something that I can do. And it's something that I would really like to do.
hmm I mean, one thing that I just is something that a lot of people can potentially struggle with is, you're in your early 60s and you're taking advice from, guys in their 30s and their, early to mid 30s.
Hmm.
How do you deal with that and not letting kind of like your ego get in the way of, I've been doing this a million years, I know the right way to do it.
I'll be honest, that was an issue a little bit. And it still, rears its head every now and then on different phone calls and whatnot, or if I'm laying in bed and think too much about it. But at the end of the day, there's something that's stronger in me than worrying about that, which is really wanting to scale this business and do something different with my life than I've ever done before. So that basically, I've just allowed that to outweigh any type of ego.
Yeah.
Not saying it doesn't come up now and then, but overall, I've been pretty successful at kind of just letting the other thing outweigh it.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of an author named Ryan Holiday? He's got a book called Ego is the Enemy. Yeah, it's a really good book. Yeah, Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. I mean, it doesn't sound like it
Okay.
sounds like you're doing the right things, right? Is like putting the ego aside and just, listening to the bigger purpose and following that. And I'm pretty sure you kind of got the purpose of the book right there.
Right. Well, yeah, never hurts to fortify that though either.
Yeah. So, okay. So you decide something you got to change. You find us, you have a call with me, one of my coaches, you decide to hop on board. Um, what were some of the realizations or first changes that you made in your business in the first, say, 30, 60, 90 days?
Something very specific that we did. I don't know if you remember this, but we had just done an estimate for a big commercial job. We just finished it actually. It ended up being about 125, 130,000, somewhere in that ballpark. And I was struggling because we didn't really have access to the decision makers. And so you told us, I think this was before we even actually signed up with you. And you said, do whatever it takes to get in front of them. And that alone will pay for, the first X amount of months of, working with you. So we did that. We managed to get a meeting together. It was a townhome community. There's 36 owners. So we managed to get the meeting with them. It was the middle of July. It was really hot. Everybody's just sweating. And, but we got in front of the homeowners and we were able to basically that day sell that job. So, that one piece of advice, which, maybe we would have done, but probably not on our own, basically landed that job for us. That was a big thing in my mind, just to change my thinking over from, I'd always thought, you hear about people hiring coaches, and I'd always thought, is it really worth it? Does it actually help? Or is it just someone, just trying to get your money and whatnot? And that really helped me to understand that, this really does work. Another thing is, one of the first things that we learned was the lights out call. And Michelle does the sales side of things. So she started doing that and, selling jobs on the spot and actually getting a down payment on the spot whenever possible. And immediately she just started having success with that. So those two things, I guess right at the very beginning, helped us see the extreme value of having you guys on our side. And since then, as we've been working with our coach, as you get further and further into it, and we're not that far into it, but as you get further into it, you learn more about different other things that need to change, and you learn about greater opportunities down the road. We've done some residential real estate investing, and but what I really want to do is get into commercial investing, real estate investing. And we talked to our coach about it, and he started, just explaining, yeah, here's, once people get to, you know, a net income that's a little bit higher, you can start, buying shares in buildings or buying partnering with somebody, or just buying buildings outright. So that was an exciting thing to me too, to hear him talk about the vision, not just in the next 3 months or 6 months or even a year, but what could possibly happen 2 to 3 years down the road.
Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, that you're able to be more removed from your business so you can focus on bigger projects. I think one thing that kind of struck me as you were talking there is like building a painting business is simple, but it's not easy, right?
Right.
The things that you have to do aren't like, it's not rocket science, but when you're going
Mm-hmm.
through it, you're getting punched in the face. It's not easy, right? Simple to say, but it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
do. And then on that point of like you having a coach and seeing that value, it's like, okay, you probably knew what you should have done, that you knew that you could have went and got in front of the decision makers, and you knew that you should be asking for the job and presenting, but you're not doing it, right? So regardless
Right.
of why, having that like accountability and that kick in the butt, it's like, hey dude, get on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else? So you've been in,
Yeah.
4 or 5 months now. Other than sales, the sales is huge. People are always like, you probably didn't think that your first win was going to be around closing more sales, but I mean, that's great that happened. What else have you implemented or done, or are you doing differently now than, you were doing before?
Definitely put in some systems with regard to like the CRM that we use. We used one, but it was basically just, just keeping track of customers, but putting systems in place that actually help us, recontact the customers on a regular basis, that sort of thing. We haven't hired an admin person yet, but we will soon, to take some of those responsibilities off of mainly Michelle. She handles pretty much that side of it. One thing that I've really had to change, we use a sub model, and there's one sub that we've used for quite a while. In fact, one of the guys on the team has been working for me for over 20 years. So I know them really well, and yet I had enabled them to kind of do it the way they wanted to do it instead of the way I wanted to do it. And even other subs that I would hire, I kind of did the same thing. And our coach one day pretty much just laid it all out there and said, yeah, as far as there were some things that they were really good at. They were really good at producing the work. They were really good at relating with the homeowners. But in terms of vehicle upkeep, being on time, personal appearance, that sort of thing, they pretty much were lacking. And it's always bothered me, but I never did anything about it because I was afraid to lose them. And then our coach one day said, yeah, you're pretty much just enabling them and actually hurting yourself in the process. So he said, just sit down with them and have a talk, and, be patient and give them some time to change things. But do it your way. Tell them how it's going to be done, and don't let them tell you how it's done. And that was extremely helpful in my relationship with them. It took away the frustration that I was feeling, because it came out toward them, even whether I realized it or not. And so it really helped with that. And we're still working through it, to some degree, but a lot of it has been rectified. To be honest, I didn't think he would change, but he ended up, being on board, and he's really working on it, and it's changed a lot. So
Yeah.
that's been very helpful for me. And it's also going to allow me going forward to scale easier as I need to hire more subs. I've pretty much prided myself on not having problems in my business because, once you do it for as long as I've done it, it's pretty intuitive to foresee things that are going to be a problem. So you can solve those things, but it took me being there. It took me, interfering when necessary to avoid all those things. And for the purpose of growing a business and scaling, it's not a very good thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to learn to let things drop when they drop, to let things fall apart when they fall apart, and then fix it after the fact, because then you can put a system in place that will help to avoid it going forward.
Some fires just need to burn.
Yep, exactly. that was a hard one for me.
Yeah, that's not my quote. That's John Evans. But that's it's a good lesson. It's hard to do, like I said, but if you can let those fires burn and your team now learns how to handle them next time, then it is easier for you just to do it yourself. but if you can
It is,
empower other people and teach them along the way, then you're better long term.
yeah. Another thing that's a little bit unique, I guess, with us is that we are a husband-wife team that also works together, and we've kind of up until a few months ago, we kind of figured out how to make it work. That it wasn't necessarily a very good system, but it worked for us. That's been a challenge also as we're going forward for us to learn how to relate with each other and stay in our own lanes and not interfere in the other person's lane and let their or it's actually more she's going to let me fail because I'm more apt to fail than she is, but that she's going to let me do what I do and I'm going to let her do what she does. That's been a hard lesson for us to learn too. So
Yeah.
it's interesting working together and living together.
Yeah, no kidding. Bless your heart for being able to do that. I love my wife dearly, but I don't think I would be able to co-own a company with her.
Well, there were moments a couple of months ago where we didn't know if we were going to either. So
Yeah.
yeah, it really is an issue, and it's a whole nother dynamic that comes in. But again, our coaches helped us tremendously with that too, just seeing it for what it is, and
Mhm.
yeah, so yeah, it's all good. I think
I think at least for now, it's going in the right
at
direction.
least for now. Yeah, we'll talk again in a couple of months and see where we're at.
Yeah, sounds good. Hopefully you're hopefully those are behind you and a little bit more clear and established. Now, when you're looking at I'm not sure how you're looking at it in terms of like growth so far, but you've been pretty steady for the last several years. You joined to kind of build some systems to be able to scale a little bit. You're like, hey, let's just scale this. How are you going to finish this year when it comes to revenue, and then what's next year look like so far?
This year we had a rough start this year before we were with you guys. Like probably the roughest one we've had in at least 10 or 15 years. So the first half of the year was bad. The second half of the year with, what we put in place has definitely picked up. On the residential side, we're probably going to end up pretty close to where we were last year, even with the very poor start. The commercial side has fallen off. Last year we got kind of coincidentally got several, or actually two commercial jobs together were a couple $100,000. It was kind of a bump that's unusual. So we didn't see that this year. So overall, we'll be down a little bit, but residential will be about the same. So, going forward into next year, we've kind of revamped our plan a little bit just recently, and we scaled it up slightly from where we were before. And so going into next year, I'm really confident as we get these things in place, the production manager and those different things that, yeah, we'll be in good shape. And
Mhm.
probably, our goal is to actually a little bit more than double next year from what we did like last year.
Yeah. So like a 1.5, 1.6 next year?
Yeah, 175 is kind of where we're shooting.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, yeah, 175 with probably like 1 million residential and 750 commercial
Mhm. Okay.
is where we're shooting for.
No, that's excellent. So if you're bringing on a production manager and Michelle's handling the admin and the sales, what are you going to be doing?
Hopefully toward the end of next year, getting her, out of the field also on the sales side of it, and then also getting an admin person to take that over. And then at that point, Michelle's job will really be the commercial side of it. She's really good at with people. She did a lot of cold calling. We had a roofing business also a number of years ago, and we pretty much built that through cold calling. And so she is very comfortable and likes to do that and is good at it. So she'll probably do that with regard to the commercial side of it. And then, good question. I don't know exactly what I'll be doing with my time when I'm out of the field because I'll have a lot of it. But just, you know, going forward, and I don't have any plans to not keep growing every year at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, you find out what you have to do next when you get there, right? You realize that okay, I don't have a production manager anymore, but now I still got a lot to do because we're doing, bigger marketing initiatives. We have a larger recruiting program. There's a lot of stuff that comes up. So now when you're looking at the future of your business, like how do you feel now about the future of your business compared to how you felt about it maybe 6 months ago?
I mean, it's a completely different animal. So yeah, I feel really good about it, and not because it was bad before, but it's just really exciting to be able to look at the possibilities that are before us.
Mhm.
You know, like I said earlier, our kids are, out of the house now. I have one grandkid, another one on the way. We just found out last weekend, and they live in different parts of the country. And one of the things that we like to do is travel. So one of the things that we haven't had up until, we still don't really have it, but we're working on is time. And so this is one of the things that we're really looking for is more time to travel, to see our kids and just to travel around the world and do what we want to do. I also, referred to it earlier, but I'd really like to get into some investing, and just build an investment portfolio on the commercial real estate side of things, and maybe elsewhere too, as we go on. But that's where I'd really like to start. So
Mhm.
those things are all really exciting to me. I feel really good about that, both from a financial point of view, but also from a what am I going to do with the rest of my life point of view. Yeah. So because prior to 6 months ago, I had thought about it a little bit, but not a lot. And so yeah, it's nice to know that I have a plan now, for as long as I want it to go on.
Yeah. I mean, you're just on the precipice of having what most, business owners strive for at the end of the day, right? Which is a business that can run without you, that can, basically be a passive uh, revenue generator.
Yeah, exactly. And doing it at 62, shows that anybody can do it. No matter where you are in life, no matter what you've done. Even for somebody who's retired and they don't need any more money, but maybe they're bored, it's like, hey, start up a business,
Yeah.
and build it. And it's a challenge and it's fun. And yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm doing it at 62, yeah, it's never too late. So,
So what would you say to someone who's, maybe, in a similar situation, has a business, they've been stagnant for a while and they're considering joining Painter Growth? What would you say to someone like that?
I would say don't hesitate at all. Um, and I know sometimes, the, the cost can be a little bit daunting, but I mean, like I said, we made up probably a year's worth of cost with some advice that you gave us before we even signed up. But even that aside, though, as long as somebody does what you guys are suggesting and follows the plan, I mean, it basically is not going to not work. So the only thing is if when we get too afraid to try things, or we try things half-heartedly because we're afraid it might fail or something like that, that's the really only thing that's going to hold it back. But uh, using the plan that you guys have given us, yeah, it's very exciting.
And you're 5 months in, I think.
Uh, yeah, and a couple months there, we really weren't doing much. We had some personal things come up that we had to attend to. So in terms of actually doing it, probably more like 3 months. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's
but right in that ballpark. Yeah.
sounds like some pretty monumental internal changes in a very short period of time.
Right. Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah. So how about if someone was like struggling with making the investment, they don't feel like cutting their profit margins down by, that much each month. Like how would you suggest someone, wrestle with that decision?
I think if you compare it to other things that you might think you need to invest in, you know, uh, shiny new toys, and in the painting business, that could be a new van, could be a new sprayer, could be, a lot of different things, new truck. Um, a lot of times we're pretty willing to invest in those things, which is actually a lot more of an investment than with you guys. Uh, but investing in you guys is going to pay for as many sprayers as you want to buy down the road. It's going to buy you a new truck down the road. Yeah, you're going to have to wait, maybe a year or whatever, but you're going to get all those things and more with investing in what you guys have to offer.
That's awesome. I appreciate
So
that.
that's how I look at it. Yeah, I mean it's really, if you think about it, it's a pretty small price to pay in the big picture of things. When we look at what things we spend money on, it's a pretty small, I mean, relatively small investment.
Yeah.
And the return is so big that it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I've certainly spent more on less.
Yeah, exactly. We all have, I think.
So I wanted to just come back before we wrapped up here, to just touch on the charitable work that you're doing. Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually something that we've done more in the past. Um, I'll just go back in history a little bit. I started painting actually in high school, The summer between my junior and senior year, a buddy of mine asked if I wanted to help him paint a house, and it was a coworker of his dad. So, I said sure. So we had no idea what we were doing. I couldn't even tell you where we scrounged together ladders and brushes and stuff. But we bid this house, the next year of a house. We bid this house for $650, and it took us most of the summer to do it. We'd work a few hours a day, and then go hang out at the lake the rest of the time. But we managed to get it done, and bid was $650, and she gave us $300 and said, "Yeah, that's all your work is worth." So with the help, it was the first painting job, right? So with the help of my friend's dad, who was the coworker, of the house we been, we took her to small claims court, and so we had his dad representing us. She actually hired a lawyer, which I'm sure she paid more for than even was potentially at stake. So we're sitting in there, these two 17-year-old kids, and this lawyer is like submitting evidence to the court and bringing photos in and everything. And we're looking at each other thinking, yeah, there's no way we're getting this money. But at the end of it all, the judge decided in our favor. And so very interesting. That was first paint job. So you'd think it probably would have ended there, right? One paint job, one trip to court.
That's got to be a record, the quickest time to make it to court in the painting business.
Yeah. But I will say, in the 45 years since that, I've never been to court again. So that's good.
Yeah, got out of your way.
So, yeah. So ended up going to college, and through college, I would paint houses in the summer. But, I just looked at it as a way to get money to do, fun stuff. Didn't try to build it or anything. And then I ended up, the last couple of years of college, getting an internship with Dayton Hudson Corporation, which is the parent company of Target. They own the Target stores. And so I worked there a couple of years. And then after college, they hired me on temporarily, and I did a couple of projects for them. Took like a year or so to do that. And I really liked what I did, but I didn't like going into an office every day. And so at that point, I decided to go back to painting. And so I started up from scratch, and the whole bootstrap model, and did that. And that was in Minneapolis. Did that for about 10 years, and then we moved down here to Charlotte. And first couple of years, I tried some other things I thought I wanted to do, and I decided I didn't really like that, so I went back to painting. Bootstrapped it again for the third time, and just built it up. But what we were doing that whole time is we were involved in several different churches, and ended up being like assistant pastors at a church so we did that for probably 20, 25 years. And so that's really where we spent our time and energy, and the business was just to get the bills paid. But then that ended probably about 10 years ago, and that's when we started doing some more building, not in terms of trying to scale it, but just, doing a better job of follow-up and that sort of thing. And then we started that roofing company, and we built that up to about 3 million with a partner. And but partnerships can be rough, and we ended up selling our half of it to our partner because we just disagreed on how to go forward. And then that's when Michelle came and started working with me for the first time, which is 5-6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of in a nutshell where we've been over the last number of decades. Yeah. And so now, we're not doing that anymore, and don't plan to anytime soon, but are very excited about doing this instead.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your story. I really appreciate that. And I learned a lot about you, and I'm excited to hang out with you. You're going to be at our mastermind event in a couple of weeks in Phoenix.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. It's going to be fun. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. Got some good stuff planned. We'll have a little bit of fun as well. But thanks again, Dave. But if anyone wants to reach out to you to talk about your experience with Painter Growth, are you open to them doing that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to talk to anybody for sure. Yeah.
What's the best way for someone to get a hold of you? Can they email you?
You can email me, Dave at Norby Painting, Norby painting.com. Text is fine.
Cool. Email's probably good enough. We don't have to share your phone number.
I hesitated there too. So certainly. Email is perfect.
All good. Well, thanks again, Dave. Appreciate your time, and stoked on your success so far, and really excited to hang out with you, Michelle, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, and thanks for all you're helping us with. We really appreciate that too.
Let's keep it going. We're just getting started.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks,
see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.